Good morning, I'm Roland Martin. Today on News 1 Now, an Ohio court upholds the suspension of a 12-year-old boy for staring at another student. Really, his mother is here to talk about it. The FCC commissioner is here to explain why she is calling for an end to hefty phone charges for prison inmates and their loved ones. South Carolina is still underwater after Hurricane Joaquin brought record levels of rain. We'll talk to a state rep who is talking about recovery efforts and helping those most in need. Kermit Alexander went from having an all-pro NFL career to being suspected of murdering his entire family. He's here with a new memoir and documentary based on his experiences. Plus, LL Cool J talks about the season premiere of NCIS Los Angeles. And as Wild Not Wednesday, our comedians are certainly in the house to have a little fun. It's time to bring the funk on News 1 Now on TV 1. A stunning story out of Ohio where a black kid, 12 years old, was suspended by his school for playing the staring game at another student. Of course, you know the staring game. Kids played all the time. We all did. That's where they just stare at each other to see who can stare the longest. Well, this black boy suspended from school last year for doing just that. The private Catholic school, St. Gabriel Consolidated, claimed the young girl was, quote, intimidated by the stare and was afraid to return to school. In a handwritten apology, the 12-year-old boy stated, quote, "I never knew she was scared because she was laughing. And I'm not a bully to anyone in this school." Now an Ohio court has upheld the suspension that the boy's parents wanted removed from his record. Joining us via Skype to discuss this the court ruling is his mother, Candace Tolbert. Candace, welcome to News 1 Now TV 1.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm just trying to understand this here. So it's a staring game and your son was, how long was your son suspended?
He was suspended for 1 day.
For 1 day. And they said it's because of the staring game and she was intimidated?
Well, what happened was on a Monday morning, there at their break time, my son was sitting there talking to two other mutual friends that they have. She walks over and says something. So he just looks at her. She starts backing away laughing. He takes a step forward. She continues to laugh and giggle. He takes another step. So he thought they were engaging in this game. She finally giggles and says, "Stop." That was it. They went the rest of the day around each other. No teacher was told. She never said, "Leave me alone, you're scaring me." My son never did any motions of evil, ball up a fist or anything. On Tuesday morning, this email comes in from the parent. Ironically, my son's name was not on that complaint. There are two black boys in the 7th grade last year, and the other boy was listed. Now, I'm sure as a 7th grader, she's 12 years old, she can tell you who she's afraid of. The school at that time never notified me. I got a phone call at the end of the day on Wednesday, and the principal, Nicole Brainerd, told me that my son could not come to school on Thursday. He was being suspended for bullying and intimidating behavior.
So it's a 1-day suspension. Now, in terms of this exchange, was the young girl, she's Asian, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so her parents sent it in. At one point, was a young girl interviewed? Did she offer, did she corroborate what your son said happened?
Actually, the principal spoke with all children. There was another boy who picked up the game after my son had stopped. All 3 children's story corroborate. They all say the same thing. However, the principal said her laugh was out of fear. The problem also is that there was no teacher in the room. So no teacher witnessed it. All the children that were in the room during break time, nobody saw an incident that they were alarmed about.
How has this affected your son?
Right now, he's going to school. The support of all his peers, he's fine with going to school. He knows from now on, when you get called to the principal's office, and hopefully you won't, you are to tell them, "I need to call my parents. I need to call my attorney," and not to speak a thing, because they broke him down for 2 days and basically convinced him that he had done something wrong. And he kept trying to tell them, "She was laughing. What are you talking about?" So the apology letter that he wrote, he was trying to explain it and try to handle the situation to let the administration know I didn't know she was afraid. You're telling me she was laughing out of fear, but all I saw was a smile on this girl's face.
This has certainly cost you and your family because you've had to hire lawyers and go through this court case. But so why did you do that? You could have easily simply let it slide. It's one day and moved on.
Well, what's disturbing is we could not find a basis for the suspension. In addition to that, that very same girl that accused him on Friday aggressively pours milk on someone else's lunch in the lunchroom in front of witnesses, and there was nothing done to her other than the principal taking her to the office and having a talk with her.
And what was the response when that was brought up by you to the principal?
She said that's what she felt. So that's the problem with the handbook that they wrote. The principal has the discretion basically to do whatever she wants. So we have an act of perception with my son saying that it's perceived that he intimidated this girl versus an actual act of aggression. One got suspended and one got talked to.
Are you?
And so that's what I'm saying is not fair.
And are you just choosing to keep your son at that school?
No, this is his last year. So he will be moving forward, which is our concern. An African-American male applying for entry into another school with a suspension on his record for bullying and intimidating behavior. One or two things are happening. One is they may not let him in. And then two, they may let him in and consider him a high-risk student. And this situation does not merit him to carry that brand on his academic record.
Last question. Are you planning to appeal this Ohio court decision?
We have not made that decision as of right now, but we're leaning that way.
All right. Well, certainly keep us abreast of what takes place. Candace Tolbert, we appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Folks, we did reach out to the school, who then referred us to the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. They have not returned our phone calls or emails at this time. Another issue that we have been following deals with what takes place when it comes to inmates and their families who are making phone calls. It is a huge, a multi-billion-dollar industry that essentially is gouging these inmates and their families. The FCC wants to do something about it. Joining me right now is Mignon Clyburn. She is the Federal Communications Commissioner and is trying to reduce those costs. Commissioner Clyburn, glad to have you back.
Thank
you.
So
how much money are we talking about? And how crazy is this in terms of some of these charges?
For individual families, it's not uncommon for them to pay upwards of $500 on average a month. But you're talking about the most economically vulnerable families in our society. So they are being weighted with the burden not only of a loved one who might have been the primary breadwinner. Now that breadwinner is gone, and now that family is in essence being overly taxed.
Okay, we're talking about a phone call.
We're talking about a phone call, which with one advocate cost him $14 a minute. Now that is outside of what is average, but it's not uncommon for a family to pay little over $1 a minute to speak to a loved one. And in an age with all-you-can-eat communications, that is outrageous. Okay,
I'm just trying to understand, are these private companies? Are the prisons? Who's making the money? The phone companies or the prisons? Who's making the money?
So there's a perverse economic incentive for the companies as well, and especially the facilities. What happens is those facilities put out a request for proposal, and a company bids on that proposal. But what is included in that proposal from the facility is, on average, commissions that could be on average about 50%. So what happens on top of the call, you're paying from 50, and we've got one case, 98% commissions, and these families are paying these outrageous rates, and this is what is at the heart of the problem.
How does first of all, what role does the FCC play?
The FCC has been petitioned by those who said this is outrageous, this has gone on long enough, and you have the ability to regulate rates. Now, the FCC has had a kind of a push-pull relationship as it relates to that, because we think that the market is generally competitive, but not in this instance. So on October 22nd, we have a chance to bring some sanity and to bring just and reasonable rates to those families.
I want to bring my panel right now, Sirius XM radio host Dr. Wilma Leon, Catalina Bird with WEAA 88.9 in Baltimore, also Huey Newsom with Project 21, National Leadership Network of Black Conservatives. Folks, this is one of those stories that, again, we hear about prison industrial complex, we hear about inmates that people just sort of overlook. There's no doubt in my mind this is an effort to just keep ripping off families and inmates.
Well, this is an effort to keep stealing from inmates and families. It has been going on for a number of years. And also what has to be factored into this is there are two primary companies that are involved in providing phone services to prisoners, and they provide kickbacks anywhere from probably 37 to 52% of the revenue that they generate from these usury fees. They provide back to the system. So here you have not only prison labor, not only prison privatization, but you also have these exorbitant rates that are being charged for simple phone calls.
It's not new to people who have relatives who are in the system. And so, you know, and there's penalties also for finding ways to circumvent it that are harsh to the inmate as well, because we tend to look at them as if they're not human. You have people who share their phone time and call people on three-way. It's a means of saving their family's money, but it's not an issue that's looked at as a financial benefit. It's an issue that's been looked at and addressed all this time as someone trying to break the rules or circumvent the system. But I know years ago, I had a brother to be incarcerated, and $650 in 1 month for 3 phone calls. Three times,
phone calls?
I spoke to him 3 times in 1 month, and my phone bill was $650.
I guess I'm surprised that when you talk about getting to market rates, but at the same time, there doesn't seem to be enough competition. You mentioned that there's this kickback problem going on between the prisons and the phone companies. Is there a way to increase the number of phone companies or increase the number of providers so we can get around this problem and increase competition and provide some incentives to the phone companies?
As I mentioned, there is one chance for competition, and that is when the facility sends out a request for proposal and somebody bids. So the competition comes at the bidding. The competition, there is no competition when it comes to the family in terms of options.
Right. So basically, a prisoner, he or she doesn't have the opportunity to say, okay, I'm a select company A, B, or C.
Absolutely
It's
not.
simply one company handles the calls. And here's that's also interesting here. You have an example where you've had some wardens say, fine, y'all want to lower the fees? I'm cutting out all phone calls.
So we have had threats of that. We hope that it's just grandstanding because every study has shown that an inmate reacts and conducts himself or herself better when they have contact with loved ones. And we know what the societal impact is. You talked about only being able to speak with your brother only 3 times. Just think about that being multiplied millions of times and what that means. Families are not keeping in touch. And what is happening is people are going home as strangers. 700,000 people are released from facilities each year. They're going home as strangers because didn't have the ability to keep in touch. Only on average 38% have regular contact with their communities. That is a prescription for recidivism, and we're seeing at the tune of 75% within 5 years. 75% of these inmates go back in. There is no connectivity, and that's horrific.
You said that, what's the hearing date again?
October 22nd.
Okay, what do you want the public to do? I mean, do you want them to comment? What do you want the public to do?
I want the public to do 2 things. I want the public to comment, look at what we do on October 22nd, but that is not the end. The issue, the challenges is they're at the state and local level. If there are ways for facilities to circumvent our rules, I promise you, they will find it. We need to be vigilant, and so we need to talk to those sheriffs and those facilities and our lawmakers at the state and local level to make sure that the reforms that we put in place, that they are adhered to.
Well, again, I mean, to me, this is another one of those examples when we talk to folks, what happens on local level. And you're talking about, again, billions of dollars at stake, and these companies as they say, making off like a fat rat. And the reality is most folks don't want to fight for somebody who's in jail.
And this is also tied to, you see how police departments make money off of tickets that are being issued. They're generating revenue off of the backs of the poor, of the incarcerated, of those who are least able to defend themselves.
All right.
I think the most important thing that you said is that the inability to stay connected with the family contributes to the recidivism rate. That's not something that we hear in the regular rhetoric.
And there are 2.7 million children impacted who can't keep in touch, who are acting out in school, and this is continuing a cycle to going back into prisons generation after generation. We have the ability to stop it, and I think this is one way to do so. All
right, Commissioner Clyburn, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch. Folks, coming up, catastrophic flooding in South Carolina. We'll talk to a state rep about the cleanup campaign and how they're trying to help those in need. Also, the federal government just announced nearly 6,000 prisoners will be released starting at the end of October, most of them nonviolent drug offenders. Also, a tale of tragedy and redemption. We'll talk with former NFL star Kermit Alexander, who was suspected of murdering his own family. He details this in a new book and documentary. Also, LL Cool J talks about his hit drama NCIS Los Angeles. 15 after the hour, News 1 now on TV1.